and metaphorically, there's a stigma that says don't talk about, being depressed and having bipolar disorder or PTSD or anything of the sort. So 100%, I think, for me, and I'll agree with Taryn, that it really helps talking about it.
Sheldon?
I would say that it's not talking about it. It's the kind, understanding reception of the listeners. Because coming out, we all have lots of days in our lives. There are those proud moments we would love to tell you about. Trying to kill myself is not one of those proud moments. It is hard, awkward, uncomfortable every single time. If there was a heart monitor on me, you would, that it's not comfortable, but it helps to disprove that inner voice that is telling you, you can never tell anyone that. All of the mean things that you say to yourself, every time that we do this, it disproves that. So that is what's healing, not me sharing, but you all being understanding and supportive. That's the most healing thing, so thank you.
The other thing, can I add, this panel spoke at our National Chapter Leadership Conference this past January in Atlanta. So I asked Taryn to clean up her presentation, and now I'm sorry that I did, but would you mind sharing with the group what you shared with the folks in Atlanta about the conversations you have with your brain?
Oh, yeah.
And
for sure.
give people a sense of what you do every day with yourself before you have a conversation with anybody else.
Sure. I just shared, and again, if your brain is anything like mine, again, as an alcoholic, my brain will have me and my brain will kill me if I'm not vigilant every single day. I had used the term my brain is an asshole because it is. My brain, because from that time I was 8 years old, I programmed it to believe I was worthless, I was a piece of shit, I had no value, I didn't matter. That is the dialogue I have told myself. I'm 39 years old. I've said that for 31 years. Those neural pathways are pretty deep and pretty entrenched. It has taken a long time, and I'm still actively working on that process of shifting the way I've thought about myself. The process of recovery and what I've learned and gained through going through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has enabled me to be open. So I want to share something that I shared just with my sponsor a few weeks ago that truly freed me. When I experienced the sexual abuse for the first time, I experienced an orgasm. So of course, in my body, I thought, what is wrong with me? I know this is wrong, but my body felt something different. What is wrong with me? And I've carried that hatred because I thought there was something wrong with me. And I know that now, no, I experienced what my body was exposed to. But again, being young, I was so confused, and that has kept me sick. To finally be able to verbalize that out loud to somebody else freed me. So again, the truth will set you free. I believe that 100%. Sorry, thank you.
John?
Just a comment and then a question. First of all, thank you all so much for having the courage to give us your voices, to give us your stories, to give us your hope, and to give us your inspiration. So first, thank you. There are a lot of people now who are in our community who've been so inspired by your voices and the voices of others who are talking more about their experience, and it is very important. We know actually those voices of hope can really reduce suicide. There's actually studies that show that. But our question that we're having a lot of our conversations in our community now is, how do you know when you're ready? And so my question for you all is, as you went through the process of making the decision to talk about it, and then when you finally did, obviously there's been amazing dividends for you and others. But what kind of advice might you give to those who are on the precipice, who are thinking about, talking about their story? What warnings might you give? What caveats might you give? What advice might you give?
Go. You go.
Like I shared earlier, it's a coming out of sorts. It's just something that's not, again, and I think I'll say this till I'm blue in the face, it's just not talked about. And as I said earlier, you're engaging people who have lived experience and just reaching out to people. it's going to help them share their story, just knowing that there are people out there who not only can empathize with them or have the compassion for somebody who has lived experience, but just knowing that there's somebody who's going to listen. My feelings was that nobody wanted to listen to that story. It was boring. It wasn't something that you wanted to talk about. It wasn't getting me an award. It wasn't making me any money. It was just something in my life that had happened, and I just chose not to really discuss about it. But like I said, I think knowing that there are people who are going to listen to you is probably the best advice that I can give you, is when you talk, people are going to listen. Some people are afraid that there's not anybody going to listen. There's nobody going to be there. There's no audience, and what's the point of talking in an empty room by yourself? So just the best advice that I can give them would just be know that there are people who are willing to listen, who want to listen, and there are people who need to listen. There's somebody who spoke that helped me tell my story, and I'm hoping that my story will help those people who just feel like nobody's out there and there's nobody listening. There's no more hope, that there is hope, and you can talk about it because there are people willing to listen. And if there are not people willing to listen, make them listen.
I think and I just recently, I guess over the summer, it's been less than a year that I've been sharing my story publicly, and it started as a result of the Way Forward report that came out of the National Action Alliance. Sally Spencer Thomas, who played a role in that, she contacted me going, hey, will you make a video? And I said, well, I will, but I want you to know that I'm not an ally, I am an attempt survivor. And she and I, being two professionals in the field, going over all of the safe messaging guidelines. And, one of the things that was really crucial to me was before I recorded my little 30-second video, I contacted all three of my children. I contacted my best friend. I contacted my mom, because it's not just my story. My story affected everyone else's lives. And so for new people that are thinking, I want to tell my story, to take care of that personal support system. So don't sacrifice your own support system to help others. It's kind of like, on an airplane, the oxygen mask, put on your mask first. And so I needed to make sure that my support system, because sharing my stories to help others is worthless if it destroys me. And so my terminology that I use to call it, whenever I give these presentations, I call it doing emotional burlesque. That I share enough, that I share enough of me to be intimate and compelling that I feel like you guys know and get a sense of who I am, but I protect my core and I change it. You could hear me tell my story 50 times, and it's going to be different each time depending on what I'm comfortable, because I can't go home and feel naked or exposed. I need to protect. So knowing yourself and knowing that your support system will be there for you is very important.
I just wanted to add something. I think I spoke with an attempt survivor recently who, when I asked her what made her reluctant to share that part of her with other people, she said it's because they asked me why. And she said, I still don't know why I got there. And she said, it's not a simple answer. I don't have a simple answer, and it's hard for me to share that without people asking it. So I think the one thing that I've learned is when people do share is to not press them for why, that they may not understand why, and be respectful about what they do want to share about their history with you.
I do have a thought I would add. I think for me, it's just being in a space and place where you're healthy, and like Shelby said, is self-care, knowing that it is emotional, it does expose you, your vulnerability of sharing some of those things. You've got to be in a place where you're actively working. I actively work recovery every day because my brain will still have thoughts. My brain still some days has the thought that says, you don't matter, you're not worth it. And so I think just being in a place and knowing that you are going to be exposed to some of that vulnerability when you do share, and knowing what self-care actions you can take. And I want to echo what she shared. My mom is one of my greatest heroes. My mom did the best she could. She didn't intend malice in what she said to me. She was a mom. I'm a mom. If my child came to me and was being abused, I don't know how I would have reacted either, So I just think the purpose of what we learn and go through and experience is huge. But I always encourage folks who say, I want to share my story. I want to make sure they're in a safe place to do so, so that it isn't detrimental to their own mental well-being also. So.
Yeah, I think clearly, if I could add, having lost my sister to suicide, it's part of the gift of forgiving yourself, forgiving your mom for not knowing what to say, but it doesn't mean she was a bad person, right? And that each of us have to find our own way, and to Shelby's point about protecting your network of support, it's critically important to do that. Any other questions? Anybody have some thoughts? Marlene?
I was just wondering, I'm a state rep from Ohio, and we have passed several laws, or in the process of passing laws, to basically help educational facilities, so whether it's K to 12 or for colleges, and also there's another law that claims September 10th as Suicide Prevention Day.
Yeah.
So it corresponds to the National Day and the Worldwide Day. I'm just wondering, is there anything that your particular state is doing that is working really well that you would like to see other states copy? Give you credit,
Oh, yeah.
but you'd like to see, with other states.
I would. I'll speak first. Just on Monday, I attended a ceremonial bill signing where our governor signed 5 new pieces of legislation. We funded a couple years back 2 positions, one at the Division of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, and then the State Office of Education, full-time suicide prevention. We saw that when New York did that, they reduced suicide, dramatically. So to have 2 people in state government actively working, and our State Office of Education lady, we joke, she is boots on the ground. That woman is in every school. As soon as she hears of a suicide, she's there. I mean, we just have seen huge things happen. The other one that's been huge was providing training for mental health providers, for folks who've gone through and are working with individuals in suicidal crisis. Sometimes they haven't even had the training. So seeing that happen, at a national level would be huge. And then just funding. I mean, we can say it till we're blue in the face. We need funding to provide research so that we can better understand what's causing suicide. How do we get ahead of this? We haven't put the money towards it at state levels, at a national level. AFSP, we're out there walking our butts off 18 miles. I got the blisters to prove it from Dallas. Still going, why am I in heels? But no, I think there's so much we can continue to do at a state level, and I'm amazed at what our state in Utah has done, but it's taken, as being personally affected, those are the people that are pushing the most because they've been affected. And let's get on the front end of this. Instead of waiting till we've been affected, let's implement change now. Can't this be a conversation we have now, before we're reacting? So that would be my
To
thoughts.
go to a more specific thing, in Pennsylvania, we had passed 1559, Act 71, which actually requires teachers to have suicide prevention education training across the state. And we're pushing More Than SAD, which I spoke about earlier, as a tool for that, to give that training to the teachers. And I think that's very important to get our children at a younger age to talk about it, and to have their educators and the people they spend 6 to 8 hours, sometimes more, a day with. And that works with not only teachers, but administration. It can work for coaches of sports and everything else too. So to go to a more specific level, I would say getting the training or passing a bill to require the training within the education department that would require them to have some type of training for mental health or suicide prevention. More Than SAD would be a research-based, very successful program to get into your state.
Yeah, I live in Georgia. We just passed the act that Brad was talking about, the Jason Flat Act, which requires teacher training in suicide prevention. So it's a huge thing. The other thing related to research, one of the things many people, I'm a psychologist, and what many people don't understand is that our understanding of suicidal behavior is like where our understanding of heart disease was in the 1960s. We really need funded research to understand this at the national level, to move us forward so that we can prevent it.
I'll just say, I can speak to Arkansas, which is where I lived before. I've only been a New York resident since November. But in Arkansas, one thing that we did, aside from the Jason Flat Act, which we had, was through our trauma system, launched into some comprehensive training of our ED nurses. It's a crucial role. We tell individuals, if you're at risk, to go to the emergency department, yet oftentimes these individuals have no training. So I love the initiatives that people are involved with, the Zero Suicide initiatives, but trying to train those nurses. And so to speak with an RN who can come to me and say, hey, that online training that you asked me to do? Yesterday, we had someone come through our ED, a 22-year-old young lady, and I responded so much better with her because I had that training. And I'm so glad. I know that our people that come through our ED at risk are going to be so much safer because of this training that we have. So doing that training to help train the nurses how to recognize someone in a suicidal crisis and respond to them appropriately. So that was a good effort, and I hope they're continuing that in Arkansas now that I'm not there.
Okay, I think we're gonna ask the Congresswoman to wrap up, and then I wanna, the panelists will be here, John is here, Colleen is here, so feel free to stick around and ask some questions. But Grace, why don't you close the program?
Well, we have votes coming up, so I really do have to go. But thank you so much for bearing yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Amazing. You were sharing a story with me about your son. You wanna relate?
Marlene, why don't you want to share with the group real quickly what prompted you to get involved?
I was a mayor of a municipality, and I have 4 children, and Joe was my oldest, and he was 18 years old, a senior at St. Ignatius High School, and he took his life. We did not know there was any issue. 6'6.5", national championship rower, great sense of humor, tons of friends, hugged us all the time, home on time. It was just out of the ordinary, And at the time that I was mayor, I was also running for state representative, and he was already going door to door with me. And then, of course, I was approached, well, are you going to continue or are you not going to continue? And to me, I needed to be there for my other children. Needed to be there, for my husband and, my mom and my mother-in-law and they're all of his friends. So with that, I saw the need for all of his friends at the high school. And after my kids sent them back to school, I went right to the high school, and I noticed that the kids were struggling because 6 months before that, my son rode on the crew team. They lost another team member that same year, and that happened to be an accident. So those kids were all struggling with 2 deaths of friends. And I thought, he needed to help the school. He got to help his friends. So I started there with helping the school and getting emergency counselors in there to help all of his friends. And then when I came to the State House, of course I met Clark Flatt. And ours is a little bit different. I think 4 states passed it by the time they came to me. And I ended up being the 11th state that passed it. And I said, I will pass it if it is the Jason Flatt Act in honor of Joseph Anielski. So I did that in memory of my son. And I also added that the training that the teachers can get and earn CEU credits, it can be any program, not just the Jason Foundation. To me, I wanted the training out there. I wanted the parents to get the training. I wanted the friends to get the training so people can recognize. And since then, I've had one other one pass. I have one in the Senate now. It already passed the House, and I'm working on about 4 other bills that's going to help not only the kids, and I always go to the kids, also the veterans. And I do a lot with military personnel as well, because I think all of you know 20% of all the suicides are with the military personnel. So that is my story, and I will just continue moving forward, not only for the health and well-being of myself, but also my family, my children, who's also, my daughter is studying to be a psychologist as well. And I just think we need advocates out there to help all the other kids that are struggling, and people aren't listening to them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for all of you for attending. Please feel free to pick up lunch if you haven't gotten it yet, and come by and say hello to the panelists or to John or Carlos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.